Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Alright, and welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and as always, I am your host, Jesse Tapia. Here we are. We have a football game this week, Thursday. Ravens-Bears, Hall of Fame game. Terrell Owens won't be there. Obviously, that's going to be a story. Lamar Jackson's going to be playing. Lamar Jackson throws for over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and we're asking, when's he going to take Joe Flacco's job? RG3 runs for 75 yards, throws for 100. We're talking about, does RG3 back? You know who's not going to be playing in that game, most likely? Roquan Smith. Why? Because the Bears can't get a done deal with the guy, which we will be talking about later on in today's show. The Bears are a good team. They're on their way to being a good team. The Bears need Roquan Smith out there playing linebacker for their team to get better. But the Bears, for some reason, are being difficult trying to get a contract done. So we will see what the Bears will end up doing. But like I said, we'll talk about that later on in today's show. Then you got the Jets. I mean, Jets haven't had a great quarterback in the history of ever. Joe Namath seems like a cool guy. Seems like a guy you'd want to hang out with. Go check that guy's stats. Go see what Joe did. Joe wasn't as good as we remember him. I mean, the guy guaranteed a Super Bowl and won it. Whoop-de-dee-doo. The numbers speak for themselves. Go check those out whenever you got a chance. We've had the likes of Chad Pennington rolling through New York for the Jets. Did pretty well for that team, I will say. Did pretty well. Of course, in typical Jets fashion, they cut him, bring on old man Brett Favre. And, of course, Pennington goes to sign with Miami and makes the playoffs, beating the Jets in Week 17, in which was the clinching game for the playoffs. Were the Jets 11-5 that year too? Let me see if I can find the record that season, because I think winner of that game got into the playoffs. Because I think that year too we had the Patriots. I think it was finishing 10-6 with Matt Castle as the quarterback. Remember that, Matt Castle? Bill Belichick will make any quarterback look really good. So let me see. Yeah, they ended up losing to the Dolphins 24-17. The Jets finished that year. It doesn't have the win and loss record, so we're going to have to count them. So let's see. They started off first 4 weeks 2-2. Then they get to 3-2, 3-3. Then they go on a winning streak. They go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-3, 8-4, 8-5, 9-5. They ended up finishing 9-7. Like I said, losing to the Dolphins in Week 17, and which helped Chad Pennington get that Dolphins team to the playoffs. Then we've had Mark Sanchez come through. They went to 2 title games with him. Not sure how, because the guy wasn't a great quarterback. Now he is somewhere. Whether it's as a backup or a third-string quarterback, that has remained to be found out. Geno Smith, he's a backup of in LA, I believe. Geno Smith can maintain a career as a backup quarterback. I'd say he's done pretty well for himself. We got Fitzpatrick go through there. McCown's still there. They drafted Ken O'Brien instead of Dan Marino. I mean, the Jets have never really had too much luck amongst quarterbacks. But a certain one that they drafted, Sam Darnold, officially signed his deal today. So we will be talking about that in the second segment. And as for the first segment, because it gets views and all that, Dez Bryant. Him and the Cowboys, not the best of friends. Dez Bryant didn't really take very lightly him getting cut by the Cowboys. Went scorched earth after that. On Twitter, figured it was over, figured they were all moving on. Then a certain quote comes out that's out of context by one Stephen Jones. And of course, this can of worms was opened once again. You figure that Dez Bryant at one point when he was with the Cowboys was going to be finishing his career with that team. I mean, it seemed like a match made in heaven. Dallas loved Dez. Dez loved Dallas. But was Dez Bryant the easiest person to work with there? I can't tell you personally because I don't work there. But it seems like from what has been said since he's been gone, and that's one thing too, I mean, all this is coming out now that he's gone. It doesn't seem like he was the easiest to work with. Me, I'm not sure how much I believe that. It just seems like Dez Bryant was one who was real passionate about the game. And I think when you see guys yelling on the sidelines at all, the media, of course, is going to change the narrative in a way where it's going to seem like Dez is just yelling at everyone about how they stink and how he's great. Which is most likely not the case from what we've heard from Jason Garrett and all. At least when those rants were going down. Okay. But to the original point, the out of context quote came from Stephen Jones. Was on a radio show or podcast, can't remember exactly. But was basically talking about and paraphrasing about how Dak Prescott has a lot less pressure on him this season because he's not going to have Dez in his ear. That was the quote that was put out for us all to see, including Dez Bryant. Dak Prescott's going to be under a lot less pressure because he won't have guys like Dez in his ear. Of course, that is going to make the rounds. And of course, that is going to get a reaction. And oh boy, it did. Dez Bryant, once again, went scorched earth on the Cowboys. And, I mean, there's a point where these guys got to stop talking about each other. Dez Bryant out here calling Sean Lee Snake Lee, which is a which is a personal favorite nickname of mine now. I mean, that was pretty clever of Dez Bryant to come up with. He says he called him Snake Lee because Sean Lee knew about him getting cut first and wanted him cut. I'm not sure how true that is. Sean Lee doesn't believe it's too true either. But the quote was basically, yeah, Dak Prescott's going to be under a lot less pressure because he won't have guys like Dez and Jason Witten in his ear. Later on, Jason Witten was brought up in that quote. But of course, they got cut off to the point where it seemed like Stephen Jones was just talking about Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant also called Jerry Jones clueless. I think he called him clueless as far as him getting cut. I wasn't thinking he was just saying about his character that he's a clueless person. But of course, that was also one that was taken out of context, I say. And, I mean, it's been a couple months. It's time for both parties to move on. Stephen Jones shouldn't be bringing up Dez Bryant's name no matter what. And Dez Bryant shouldn't be talking about the Cowboys. Move on. It's a new season. Training camp starting up, and we're still talking about Dez Bryant and the Cowboys not liking each other. I mean, there's a point where it's over and done with. Dez Bryant doesn't play for the Cowboys anymore. The Cowboys don't pay Dez Bryant. I don't understand why Stephen Jones is bringing up Dez Bryant. And I understand that maybe he didn't mean it in a certain way because it doesn't seem like he did. But if you're Stephen Jones and you're the Cowboys, you got to be smart enough and you got to realize that anytime you bring up Dez Bryant's name, it is going to be looked at under a microscope, and the media will try to find any certain way they can to turn that into you saying something bad about Dez Bryant. But obviously, they weren't aware to that fact. All you could have said was, I think Dak Prescott will be under a lot less pressure this season. And we would have been fine. But of course, that's too easy to do. Everything's got to be made difficult. And I just think that, it's a shame that we're probably not going to see Dez Bryant playing the Cowboys this season. Seems like he's going to be signing with the Browns. I'd very much him sign with the team that plays the Cowboys, just so we could see who was right about this whole thing. Was it the Cowboys being right about Dez Bryant, he's done, or is Dez Bryant right, and does he still have something to offer? Because I personally think Dez Bryant's still a good receiver. I just think it was the point where they had to shorten up the offensive bit because Dak Prescott can't really throw down the field, and he chooses not to. So obviously you're going to see Dez Bryant's number slip there. But it seems like he's going to be signing with the Browns. And Dez Bryant, he's got to be careful. He's got to play well, because if not, he could be out the league after this season. That's very much a possibility. This whole social media stuff, Dez Bryant going on rants, doesn't really seem like it's going to help him get a job in the long term. So if he doesn't play well with the team he signs with, there's no incentive to bring Dez Bryant on your team. But we'll see what ends up happening. I got a feeling that Dez Bryant's going to be on the better team compared to the Cowboys too this season. So, like I said, we'll see. But either way, we're going to wrap it up here. Next up, we're going to be talking about those Jets, all right, and Sam Darnold. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. We spent that first segment talking about Dez Bryant and the Cowboys still hating each other. I don't understand why they still talk about each other. I think maybe they still miss each other, but either way, it's gotten a little bit old, and the Cowboys need to stop bringing up Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant needs to stop talking about the Cowboys. Stephen Jones got to be smart enough to realize anytime you bring him up, it's going to be scrutinized no matter what or however you meant it. Use your head here, guy. Come on now. Of course, sadly enough, I don't think we'll be seeing Dez Bryant play the Cowboys this season. It should have been that way. Doesn't even have to be a team in the NFC East. He could just play for maybe a team in the AFC that just so happens to be playing the NFC East. Like an AFC South team. I believe they're playing the NFC East this season. That would have been much better. And let's see who is playing the NFC East. Like I said, I do think it is the AFC South this season, and yes, they are. Put Dez Bryant on the Texans. Have him play the number 2 receiver spot instead of Will Fuller. You'll be much better, and Dez Bryant gets to play the Cowboys. They play in Houston. Let's see which NFC South or AFC South team plays in Dallas. Could it be Tennessee? That'd be a nice little spot for Dez Bryant to go to. Yes, they do play in Dallas, Tennessee. They play in Dallas, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is a Monday night football game. That is November 5th. Let us check. November 5th. Yes, that is on a Monday. Imagine Dez Bryant playing for the Titans, who probably will end up having one of the best offenses in football on Monday night against the Cowboys in Dallas. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. November game too, so we'll see. I'm sure both teams are going to be needing to make the playoffs, trying to make the playoffs. I mean, just imagine the ratings for that game, huh? But it does seem like he will end up with the Browns, so I guess we'll just have to take that. And now we move on over to New York. For me, the most overrated sports city in the world, you got the Yankees and Giants. After that, you got the Knicks and you got the Mets. Kind of brings it down, doesn't it? I think it does. I mean, the Knicks, Mets, and Jets. Not really the cream of the crop in their leagues. I mean, I think we can all go out and say that New York sports teams are extremely overrated. Probably due to the fact that you got the New York media out there. The New York media is the biggest in this country, and they do well to make it seem like the Knicks are a team who are relevant to the Celtics and Lakers among overall franchises in the NBA, which is not the case. I mean, it seems like the Jets got some type of historical value to them when in reality, Joe Namath called a Super Bowl, won it, and that's the only notable thing about their team's franchise history. And then you get the Mets, who are basically the forgotten little brother of the Yankees. I mean, I'm telling you, man, New York team's not as good as everyone makes them out to be. Extremely overrated. All right, Knicks' last title was in '75. Jets, I think since Namath. The Mets, I think since they had Gooden and Darryl Strawberry on that team. And the Jets have gone quarterback through quarterback without a great one. Joe Namath, for me, is overrated. You guys know it. And I just think the Jets just haven't gotten that one great franchise quarterback that everyone has had before. I mean, looking at their division, Patriots had Tom Brady. The Bills have Jim Kelly. The Dolphins, Dan Marino. Jets, Joe Namath. I mean, Joe Namath isn't on any of those quarterbacks' level. He's not. Just plain and simple. I'm going to go through each Jets quarterback that they've ever had. We started in 1960, Al Dorrell. 1962, Johnny Green, the Goss Cup, Butch Songen. 1963, 1964, Dick Wood. And then Namath comes in from 65 to 90, or 65 to 69, excuse me. Let's see, 1970, Namath is starting to go down a bit. Al Woodall plays there. 72, Namath plays 13 games. So Namath is basically their quarterback up until 77. Richard Todd is their quarterback then. Switches between him and Matt Robinson for a couple seasons after that. Richard Todd starts once again from 80 to 83. Then 84, they draft Ken O'Brien instead of Dan Marino. Great job there. He's their quarterback up until 91. Then Boomer Esiason comes into town. He's there from 93 to 95. 96, they go Frank Reich, Neil O'Donnell, Glenn Foley. 97, Neil O'Donnell. Then Vinny Testaverde comes in, 98. Let's see, Ray Lucas. Chad Pennington comes into that team 2002. Then you got Brett Favre 2008. Mark Sanchez 2009. Gino from 13 to 14. So 2 seasons. He was there from 6 till 16, but of course didn't really start. And then they've got through Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh McCown. Haven't really had too much success amongst quarterbacks. Is Sam Darnold going to be that guy who finally becomes that great quarterback that they've been missing since forever? It's possible. It is. Sam Darnold is very good. But I will say this. Sam Darnold did have himself a bit of a Jake Locker year, meaning, had a great year, chose to stay in school. The next season, doesn't do too great. Either way, though, did remain a top 3 pick in the draft. I will give him that. Did have a big turnover problem in college, and I'm sure the Jets are hoping that that isn't the case coming into this season. And I'm not even sure if he's going to be the starter for that team. But either way, the reason why I'm bigging him up is because he finally got a deal done with the Jets. And their QB situation is very odd considering the fact that you got Teddy Bridgewater on there, which kind of throws a monkey wrench in everything. I'm not really sure why Bridgewater is there. It never really made any sense to me as to why they ended up signing him. Because, I mean, if Sam Darnold wins the job, then McCown is your backup, and that leaves no place for Bridgewater to be on that team. And I just feel like it's kind of pointless if you keep Darnold as a third quarterback if McCown ends up winning the starting job. I mean, you got to figure that they got to do something else with Teddy Bridgewater. Okay. I'm not sure that they do, but like I said, there's got to be something up their sleeve because it really does not make any sense whatsoever to have Bridgewater on that team. And let's check out the Jets' schedule and see exactly how tough it is. I mean, they got the Lions week 1 in Detroit, then you got Miami, Cleveland, Jaguars, Broncos. They could start out the season 0-5. That's very much a possibility. Then you got to play the Andrew Luck-led Colts, Minnesota, who's a Super Bowl contender, the Bears, who should be very good. That's in Chicago. Then you got to play in Miami. Then you got the Bills, Patriots, Titans, Bills, Texans, Packers, Patriots. There's no real easy spots in the schedule other than maybe Buffalo. The Dolphins are better than them right now. The Bears are better. The Vikings are better. The Colts are better. The Broncos are better. The Jags are better. The Browns are better. The Lions are better. The Patriots are better. The Titans are better. The Texans are better. And the Packers are better. They're just better than the Bills right now, I'd say. But of course, I mean, I'm curious to see if they do end up starting Darnold week 1. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. Going with McCown week 1 just seems kind of counterproductive. We all know who the future of this team is. And, of course, there's going to be growing pains and all that, but, I mean, usually, if they're good enough, they'll play well. And I think that it's either Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen who are the most NFL-ready quarterbacks right now. And there's just a point where you're going into the season with Josh McCown as your starting quarterback. I mean, there's no interest there. There's no interest in the team. Who wants to watch Josh McCown play another year as starting quarterback for the Jets? Not many. Okay, no one's expecting you to win a lot of games, and I assume that you're not with Josh McCown. So why not just roll out with Sam Darnold out there? I mean, of course he's going to have ups and downs. Of course he's going to struggle a bit, but there's a point where he's the long-term future. McCown isn't. I get you're paying McCown $10 million this year, but there's a point where the team's finally got to overcome what you're paying a certain guy, being McCown. And like I said, you got to roll with the future here. And again, I have no clue what Teddy Bridgewater's doing there. I mean, I figure that the starting quarterback week 1 is either going to be McCown or Darnold. I mean, does it make sense? Because I think McCown or Darnold's contract is guaranteed $30 million. He's got a 20-something million signing bonus. You're going to be paying him all that just to be the third quarterback all season long, the third string? I mean, does that really make sense? No, it doesn't. Bridgewater's the one who's making the least amount amongst those quarterbacks, which makes Bridgewater the most expendable. Which makes it no sense because, I mean, Bridgewater's a good quarterback. It made no sense for him to sign with the Jets, I think is the point I'm trying to get at. It's not the Jets signing him, it's him signing with the Jets. I just don't understand it. But of course, I'm sure there's some long-term plan in place, so we'll see what ends up happening. But, I mean, that's all I got to say about that. Just wanted to note that Sam Darnold didn't end up signing with this deal with the Jets, so he will be in training camp. Curious to see how he looks like with that team. I mean, if he wins a starting job, Jets fans got to be pretty big excited, so like I said, we'll see, but we're going to wrap it up here. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Bears and Roquan Smith, so stay tuned, and I will be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. So far today, we've talked about, yet again, Dez Bryant. I mean, him and the Cowboys. Cowboys got a ring of honor. You think Dez Bryant's ever going to see his name up there? I'm not too sure. I think he is one of the best receivers to play there, but it just seems like the bridge has been burned already. All right. I mean, but we'll see how that relationship continues. I'm sure eventually they'll make up. But will it happen soon? No. And we also talked about Sam Darnold signing his deal with the Jets. Is he finally going to be that quarterback they've been waiting for? I mean, it could have been Dan Marino, but of course, Ken O'Brien is a thing. And I mean, they signed Marino. They might be the best team in New York amongst them and the Giants. But of course, that didn't happen. And now they're waiting to see if Sam Darnold's the guy. Ken O'Brien wasn't the guy. Chad Pennington wasn't the guy. Brett Favre wasn't the guy. Geno Smith wasn't the guy. Mark Sanchez wasn't the guy. Is Sam Darnold the guy? That remains to be seen. Would I like him to start week 1? Yes. Do I think he should start week 1? Who knows? He hasn't played training camp yet. But if he does look good enough, yes, throw him out there, make McCown the backup, trade Teddy Bridgewater if you can. If not, just cut him. And if Teddy Bridgewater ends up getting cut by the Jets, does that mean his career is over? Or do you think there's some team out there who still finds some value in Teddy Bridgewater? Because obviously the Vikings didn't. If they did, they would have kept him. But of course, I mean, if it came down to it, if I thought I had a legitimate chance at Kirk Cousins, I'd probably get rid of Teddy Bridgewater too. So, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening there. But the Jets finally got to get one right? Or is it going to be a Cleveland Browns type of thing where they just continuously draft bad quarterback after bad quarterback? And then, I mean, it's just a complete abyss of just drafting quarterbacks. Who knows? But either way, we move on from that. And now we head over to the NFC North. A lot of good teams in that division, let me tell you. Packers, Super Bowl contenders because Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. Vikings, Super Bowl contenders because their entire team is good. I mean, from Cousins to Diggs and Thielen, Rudolph, and that defense. Plus, you got Dalvin Cook coming back. I mean, the team's going to be real solid. Detroit, if there's a solid system in place and Patricia's running the show the way things need to be ran, Detroit could surprise some people this season. They actually have a good team. I've never really understood Detroit. Detroit has the players to be a regular playoff team. But for some reason, come up short every time. I don't get it. They should be doing well every year, considering Stafford is their quarterback. But of course, it hasn't been the case. And then you got the Bears. The Bears are trying to work out a deal with Roquan Smith still, who was their number 8 pick, or their first round pick, number 8 pick overall of the draft. Roquan Smith, it's kind of been the theme the last week or so. I've been talking about players who affect wins and losses. Roquan Smith does that. He will make your team better. He will add a few wins to your team, I think. Of course, he's a rookie, so I'm talking him up big time right here. But I do think he is that good. Roquan Smith could end up being one of the great linebackers in this league. But the reason why there still hasn't been a contract signed is because there's a new helmet targeting rule out, and if you get hit enough, you could get hit with it enough, you could get suspended. Obviously, this isn't great for safeties who like to hit, and also linebackers. So obviously, there's a higher probability, due to this rule, of Roquan Smith getting suspended. And the Bears are trying to make it to where if Roquan Smith gets suspended, then the team would be allowed to reclaim guaranteed money if that does happen. This is what the holdup has been. This is why Roquan Smith is not currently at training camp with the Chicago Bears. And I think it's just the Bears are trying to be cheap here. I mean, how much money are you trying to reclaim here? $1, $2 mil? I mean, come on now. It makes no sense for the Bears to be this way. I think this one's on them. And if I'm Roquan Smith and I'm his agent, we're not moving a finger until the Bears say, you know what, we won't take away any of your money if you are suspended due to this rule. Because you know what? The NFL is making it harder and harder for defensive players to play their game. You can't hit up high, you can't hit down low. You got to hit him in the torso, basically. You got him with the shoulder. You can't hit him with the crown of your helmet. And you can't hit him until basically they've made a football move, because otherwise it's hitting a defenseless receiver. There's all kinds of rules that they got to follow now. I mean, imagine Ronnie Lott out here in this league. Imagine Ed Reed now with the rules being full-fledged. Those guys would be getting suspended like it's no one's business. And, I mean, maybe it's just the NFL. Obviously, their thing is safety, but I think maybe it's just a point where, not myself, but fans in general want to see points. They want to see those high-scoring games. Me, I'm more of a defensive guy. I want to see a defensive masterpiece out there. I want to see a team go for 4 sacks. I want to see those 21-14 games. I want to see 17-10 games. I want to see the defenses go out and dominate the game. It's the same thing with me in baseball. I'd rather see a 1-0, 2-1 pitching duel rather than a 9-8 game. It's just more exciting to me, just to see the dominance. I like defensive teams in the NBA. Why? Because they're exciting. Again, everyone wants to see big points, but there's a point where you appreciate the game enough to where you respect what each unit is doing. And maybe that's just why the NFL's changed these rules, like I said. You want to see points. Now, it's going to be tough coming from the Bears, but either way, I mean, they got to get this done, the Bears. I think this is one where they just got to swallow their pride and give Roquan what he wants. Like I said, I think Roquan Smith is a guy who can change a defense up and can affect you winning in a good way. The guy was your number 1 pick, 8th pick overall in the draft. Get the deal done, please. The Bears don't need this type of distraction coming into camp. You don't want a Joey Bosa situation either, where he's going to be missing a lot of the season. And obviously, Bosa didn't miss like the entire season or anything like that, but he missed enough to, it was noticeable. And I just think that this Bears defense isn't complete until you add a guy like Roquan Smith. Roquan isn't out there week 1, and that's going to change a lot of things up. I mean, they got, Green Bay week 1. I think that's Sunday night. You really want to go into that game without your number 1 pick on national TV, where you could get embarrassed with whoever's playing in his position? No, you don't. And yes, that is Sunday night. That's a great Sunday night game right there, too. We got Falcons, Eagles Thursday night, first game of the season, then Packers, Bears Sunday night in Lambeau. I mean, the NFL did that very great, I will say. Who's our Monday night football games this season? Can't remember exactly. But either way, yeah, Bears need to swallow their pride and get this deal done. Roquan Smith is good enough to where you need him out there. And like I said, I don't think that the Bears would be losing out on too much money if they just gave him the guaranteed money instead of trying to take it away if he ended up getting suspended because of that rule. I mean, come on now. Let's all be adults here. So let's see, Monday night games. Jets at Lions. Rams at Raiders. ESPN, the NFL, better be hoping that Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback week 1 for the Jets. Because, I mean, if we got Josh McCown playing that game, there's going to be a bit of a problem. Everyone's going to be tuning in, but, I mean, the casual fans maybe wait till later on in the day to see the Raiders and Rams play because, I mean, who wants to see Josh McCown versus Matt Stafford? I'd rather see Sam Darnold, obviously. But as far as Roquan Smith goes, I mean, I think the Bears got to give in here and give him what he wants. Or at least not reclaim that guaranteed money if he's suspended because of that helmet rule. I think that's just the way it needs to go here. I mean, of course, we'll see what ends up happening. But like I said, the Bears don't need this kind of distraction here. You need all your guys out on the field week 1. So we'll see if they end up getting it done. But either way, we're going to wrap it up here. Next up, we'll be talking about anything else in the world of football. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. So, I was looking more into that helmet rule, and basically you can't lower your helmet to make a hit. I mean, I don't understand how these guys can play defense anymore. I mean, obviously you got to hit with your shoulder and all that, but how's that going to work if the guy moves to a certain spot and he just so happens to get hit with the helmet? I mean, we're going to see a lot of penalties this season where it's going to be a bunch of headaches because you know it shouldn't have been a penalty and the defender couldn't do anything about it. We're moving towards college football. And I mean, you can get suspended for targeting. I've seen that rule take place over in college football. It's the dumbest rule I've ever seen in my life, and it's the most frustrating rule, let me tell you. I mean, these guys shouldn't be getting suspended for hitting. I think there's a point where, yes, you're trying to make the game more safe, but there's a point where it waters it down too much, and these players got to know what game they're playing. You can't have it both ways. You can't play football and be completely safe. That's just not how it works. You know exactly what game you're playing here. And there's a point where you got to realize that there's consequences of getting hit. And if that happens, then it's on you because you chose to play this game. Now, I agree with some of the rules that they've implemented and all that, but as far as some of these, like this one, the helmet rule and the targeting rule, I mean, if this is about player safety, have them sign a waiver acknowledging that they know what they're getting themselves into and be done with it there. Don't add dumb rules like this. It's going to water down the game. It's going to be Big 12 football. And Big 12 fans are like, why are you bringing us up? Because you guys don't play defense over there. I mean, 50 to 50 games aren't really fun to watch. At least for me. I want to see some defense at least. I don't want to see a guy get ejected or suspended because he just hit someone coming down the middle. And that's going to happen this season. Someone is going to get suspended for that. And it's ridiculous. Excuse me. But, of course, I mean, it's the NFL watering down the game. They want to make it as safe as possible, and that's great. But like I said, there's a point where these players got to know exactly what they're getting themselves into. And if you don't like the fact about how dangerous it is, then don't play football. You shouldn't be able to have it both ways. Like I said, some of these safety rules are good. Some of them are a little out of hand. And if it's the offensive players complaining about them, then don't play. Go play baseball. Go play soccer. Go play basketball. Go play whatever else. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like I said. Okay. Imagine Ed Reed or Rodney Lott playing at this time. They wouldn't even play because they'd be suspended years on top of years on top of years. So, we'll see how this rule works out. I already know there's going to be controversy surrounding it. Should so-and-so have been suspended because of this targeting penalty? Should so-and-so have been suspended because of this? Should so-and-so have been fined because of that? They're going to be topics this season, and I guess we're just going to have to just deal with it. This is where the NFL is heading towards. But, of course, it's the way it is, I guess. So let's see. Anything else going on in the world of football? Like I said, Sam Darnold signed his deal. I mean, the only remaining drafted player who hasn't signed yet is Roquan Smith. I mean, it is in the Bears' interest to get this deal done. I don't understand the whole ticky-tacky type of stuff like this where they're not. Let's see what else is going on. Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks got themselves a little RV. Nice little clubhouse they got. I mean, I guess this is nice for the Browns, considering the fact that everything about their quarterbacks has been negative in the years before. And I mean, you got to figure that with Tyrod being the starter, I mean, when is Mayfield going to be the starter of the Browns? Is it going to be next season? Will he come in this season? That remains to be seen. Tyrod Taylor's a very good quarterback. The Browns might have a problem where Tyrod Taylor makes the playoffs with this team. I mean, if Tyrod can take that Bills team last year to the playoffs, who's to say he can't take this Browns team? And like I said, he takes the Browns to the playoffs. He's only on a one-year deal right here. If you're the Browns, are you really going to take the risk of letting Tyrod go in order to make Mayfield the starter, even though Tyrod took your team to the playoffs? And again, this is all hypotheticals, but these are all questions we might need to ask ourselves when the time comes. I mean, imagine Tyrod takes him to the playoffs. They let him go so they can start Mayfield. Mayfield just isn't what they thought he was going to be. And the Browns think again. I mean, that would set the team back years, let me tell you. Absolutely years. And I don't think the Browns can really afford going backwards anymore. There's a point where the being terrible stuff was funny, but now it's time to get your act together and start winning some ball games. I think it's honestly bad for the NFL that the Browns have been this bad for this long. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Of course, you're going to have teams who go for a few years being terrible, but the Browns have done it for 2 decades. There's a point where something is going wrong with that team. And I think it starts with the owner. I mean, look at Tennessee, the college football team. Brown's owner is one of the biggest donors for Tennessee. So basically, he has a say in a lot of the stuff that goes down there. Tennessee hasn't been good in ever. It's been a while. Okay. Tennessee fans talk about all the old days because they have nothing to talk about now. I mean, I don't even think they won a conference game last season. That's a problem. Maybe the Browns' problems have to do with their owner. It's possible. I've always been saying that the Browns needed to sell their team and restart. Of course, you can't do that now, but either way, I mean, that team needs a whole shakeup. Maybe this year is that shakeup, and it's happening. Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon, Taylor, Hyde, Johnson, Chubb. Also got Garrett on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they do this season. I don't think they're better than Pittsburgh. I don't think the Browns will make the playoffs. It's tough going from 0 wins to about 9 or 10 and getting into the playoffs. We saw Miami in 2007 go 1-15. The next season with Tony Sparano, they go 11-5 and make the playoffs. Of course, they get blown out by the Ravens in the wild card game, but a turnaround like that is tough. The Dolphins needed some gimmicks like a wildcat formation to get it going, but either way, it worked for them. What is the Browns thing going to be this year? What are they going to use to turn it around? I mean, looking at that offense, it will be exciting to watch. Todd Haley, whether you like him or not, doesn't matter. He is a great offensive mind in this league. As soon as I saw that he'd be calling the plays and not Hugh Jackson, I mean, this team instantly got better. Hugh Jackson, I don't think is head coaching material. I think he can be a great offensive coordinator, but as far as being a head coach, I just don't think he has the qualities to get it done. But of course, we'll see this season. I mean, if he only wins about 5 or 6 games, I say he gets fired after the season. I think the safe spot for him is 7 wins at least. So, it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with this team. I mean, they could be better than the Ravens. They could be better than the Bengals. But that's not a given. So, that's all I got to say about that. We're going to wrap it up here. Today we talked Dez Bryant and the Cowboys. I mean, they're constantly getting into it. They're like children fighting. We talked about Sam Darnold signing his deal with the Jets. He'll now be in training camp. We talked about Roquan Smith. Him and the Bears have yet to reach a deal on on Roquan Smith's contract. And then for this segment, we talked about anything else going on in the world of football. So, thanks for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. As always, I am your host, Jesse Tapia. I will be back tomorrow, so stay tuned, and I will talk to you guys later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.